get it done. All right, so we're on Matthew chapter 20. Jesus has just talked about the rich young man whose God was his money, which is why Jesus gives him a very, very powerful command to give all his money away to the poor. And this is not a universal command, that if you would be perfect, you should go and give everything to the poor. Unfortunately, that's how it's been taken in a lot of, even in Christianity, like with the monastics. When the father of monks, St. Anthony of Egypt, was in church, he heard in church Jesus say, as they were reading the scriptures, that if you would be perfect, go sell everything you had and give it to the poor. And that's exactly what he did, right? And this leads to lots of other issues later on. Vows of so-called poverty or the like. I mean, he sticks his sister in a convent, basically, so he can go out and live in the desert by himself. So, which is a big problem, right? Because you can't ever go out of the world, right? You can't ever go out of the world. And the only way you go out of the world is if you die, right? All right, so chapter 20. Well, and before chapter 20, we also have the rewards that God gives good works, not on account of the good works, but on account of God's grace. God does give things to people who do good works. But it's not because they deserve it, but because God is gracious and merciful. All right, so chapter 20 begins with a parable about the essence of salvation. That the essence of salvation is all the same, even though there will be degrees of bliss in heaven, or degrees of glory. So, someone wants to read chapter 20, verses 1 through 7.
For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire men to work in his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. About the third hour, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, "You also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. He went out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour and did the same thing. About the 11th hour, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long, doing nothing?" "Because no one has hired us," they answered. He said unto them, "You also go and work in my vineyard."
All right, so here we see that Jesus tells a parable about the kingdom of heaven. He talks about God as being a householder or a landowner, and he owns a vineyard. This is a very common image in the Old Testament, especially in Isaiah chapter 5, where Israel is compared to a vineyard, right? And here he has people going to work in said vineyard, right? That the kingdom of heaven here, this is the nature of Christians, is that if you love God, you're going to work for his kingdom. You just are, right? And so here there are a bunch of guys who begin in the beginning of the day, right? These are, of course, the Jews. They are they are going to work for a denarius a day, which was a day's wages. Third hour is 9 o'clock. He goes out and he gets more. Then he goes out at 12 o'clock, noon, and 3 o'clock, the 9th hour, and he does the same thing. And about the 11th hour, right towards the end of the day, he goes out and still does the same thing. Right? God's call, I mean, you could think about this as God's call to the Jews, right? All the way through. You could think about it as God's call during a person's life. Some people are called when they're born, right? And are baptized into Christ's kingdom. Others are deathbed conversions, right? Some are in between, right? So when even was come, the Lord of the vineyard saith unto his steward, Call the laborers and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. Every man received a denarius. They got a full day's wages for doing 1 hour of work. But when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny, a denarius. So, because that's what they had agreed to work for, right? However, they are greedy. And when they had received it, they murmured against the good man of the house, just like the Israelites, right? Saying, These last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which have borne the burden and the heat of the day. Right? And that's always the critique, right? Especially if your work's righteous. I deserve more because I worked harder, right? But they forget that apart from Jesus, you can do nothing. And so, rather than viewing this as grace, they view it as unfair. Works, and that's the beautiful thing, is that God is unfair. He never gives us what we deserve. Because if he gave us what we deserve, we'd be in hell, right? But he, that is the householder, answered one of them and said, Friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst not thou agree with me for a penny? See, whenever God calls someone friend in the Bible, it's not a good thing. Seriously, it's go through and look. Whenever he calls somebody a friend, not a good thing. Okay? Take that thine is and go thy way. I will give unto this last, even as I give unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good? And that's the question, right? And this happens today, where people think that they deserve more because they've been lifelong members of a church, or their grandfather built the church, or whatever, right? That they deserve a little special treatment, right? But Jesus makes us equal, right? In terms of salvation, all receive the same reward, whether they've labored in God's kingdom their entire lives, or if they come to it at the end of their life. And that's the question. Is your eye evil because God is good? Is your eye evil because God is gracious? So the last shall be first, and the first last, for many be called, but few chosen. Right? Those who think that they deserve more will be last. Right? And those who are last in all things will be put forward first. So, this parable is all about the essence of salvation being the same thing. And that whenever we fall back under the law and murmur because we don't think it's fair, we should redirect our eye because our eye is evil. So, all right, 17. And Jesus going up to Jerusalem took the 12 disciples apart in the way, and said unto them, Behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man shall be betrayed unto the chief priests and unto the scribes, and they shall condemn him to death. They shall deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and to crucify him, and the third day he shall rise again. So, here they are on their way up to Jerusalem. Now, in John's Gospel, we see it a little different. Jesus goes up to Jerusalem all the time, which he did. The thing with the synoptics is that it almost seems like Jesus is never hardly in Jerusalem. But he was. The thing is the reason why they don't record these other times he's in Jerusalem is to show that now he is going to Jerusalem to die. He is going to the holy city to be betrayed. He is going to die for the sins of mankind. He is going to be betrayed by his own. He is going to be handed over to the heathen, to the Gentiles. He will be killed, and then he will rise again. And so, going up to Jerusalem in the synoptics is like a crescendo, right? It just keeps getting, as they get closer to Jerusalem and closer, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until the crucifixion. So, in 17, we see this is what the Son of Man came to do. He came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So, this is obviously very important because the disciples don't get it, right? So, verses 20 through 22.
Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and, kneeling down, asked a favor of him. What is it you want? He asked. She said, Grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right hand and the other at your left in your kingdom. You don't know what you are asking, Jesus said to them. Can you drink the cup I am going to drink? We can, they answered.
Oh, that's it?
Like a whole
22.
And to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? That's not in there? Well, that's
It isn't
weird.
mine.
Okay. Well, I'll have
It's a little
to...
bit more
NIV,
for that.
yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it's all observed.
Huh. Interesting.
Huh.
I don't know. I don't have my thing, so I can't look it up to see if... But anyway, so we see that here we know that who's the mastermind behind this? Well, I think it's the two Zebedee boys, but they ask Mom to do it. Why? Because it's hard to say. Yeah, it's hard to say no to Mom, right? It's the same way when Solomon is king and his brother wants something, his half-brother wants something, he goes and he asks Solomon's mom, right? So, this probably came from Zebedee. Well, from Zebedee's sons, and Zebedee's sons are James and John, right? They are, who are they?
Sons of thunder.
Yes, the sons of thunder, because they wanted to call down fire and consume a town, right? Of those who wanted to kick Jesus out. Then they rejected him. They are, we know that James is the first apostle to die for the faith. We know that John is the last apostle who is alive. We also know that they are in the inner circle of Jesus, right? And the higher up you are, the closer to power you want to be, right? You got to beat out that Peter character. Well, we laugh, but that's the way it is, right? I mean, this is not like, there were rivalries, and we see it all the time in the Bible, right? We see all these rivalries and dissensions about who's the best, right? Who's the greatest of the disciples? And it makes sense that, they try to get ahead, right? In the pony race.
We see it in St. Louis, in our own church, over the years we have.
It's hard not, this is just, we all want to be important, right? Nobody ever says, I want to be a nobody, right? What's that Toby Keith song, right? I want to be somebody, right? That's what people do, and we reward it, right? We like ambitious people. We like, we respect ambitious people, right? And so it makes sense from a worldly perspective that there obviously has to be a hierarchy. And so, of course, this family wants to put the monopoly on it, right? And so they ask for the two most important positions in the kingdom, to sit at one's right hand and one's left hand, right? Now, what are they actually asking for? That's what they're asking for. But, like Jesus tells them, they don't know what they're asking for. Like, just with the bare meaning of the words, what are they really asking for?
To suffer like Jesus?
Yeah. To be at his right and at his left at the crucifixion when he comes in his glory, right? Because that's when the Son of Man is glorified, in this great shame and indignity, right? That's why he's like, you guys don't even know what you're asking, right? And then he asks them, are ye able to drink of the cup that I shall drink of? And the King James continues on, and to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. Now, it depends. It'd be fun to see the parallels here with other Gospels. Whether someone who is copying this down remembered from another gospel that Jesus says this, because he does say this somewhere else. I know he does, right?
Reference in mind to Mark 10:38.
Right. So what they probably did was, when they were copying it, they inserted the Markan part of it, right? And he's using here two images that are very, very, one is very, very common in the Old Testament. When you drink of the cup, it's a cup of suffering, or it's a cup of madness, right? Where God gives Israel the cup to drink, and it's a cup of judgment and of punishment and of suffering. And it says that Israel will totter and vomit like a drunken man. Right? To drink the cup was a bad deal, right? It's a picture of suffering, right? And you drink it down to the dregs, okay? Which the dregs are all maybe some of you. What's at the bottom of your wine bottles, Leon?
That's where all the dead yeast is.
Right. Those are the dregs, right? It's all of the crap at the bottom of the wine bottle, right? That's what it means to drink the cup down to the dregs. It means drinking all the dead yeast and stuff, right? And it's a picture of judgment, right? Same thing with being baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. Here, Jesus is not talking about a literal water baptism, right? But here he is using baptism as a baptism of fire, a baptism of blood, a baptism of suffering and pain. That is what he's talking about here. And these two guys say, yeah, we're able to do this. Once again, they don't actually know what they're saying, right? It's kind of like I shared on Facebook the other day. Oh Lord, make me more like Jesus. Then Jesus sends you sufferings and trials. And then it's, well, I thought that'd turn out differently, right? I mean, that's exactly...
Praying for patience, and God sends you things to aggravate them.
Right, because
So you'll learn patience.
patience is only learned in suffering and in trials, right? Just like, and we look at the little things. I mean, we laugh at it, but I mean, for a little kid who has to wait for Christmas morning to open the presents, that's huge suffering. It is, right? Because that's the most important thing to them at that point, right? And yet it's good for them to learn that, because then right? Patience is a virtue that actually has to be inflicted on you, right? Nobody learns this by nature, okay? Nobody is naturally patient. You actually have to go through things to learn patience. And Jesus said unto them, Ye shall drink indeed of my cup, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared of my Father. So he's like, yeah, you will suffer like me. You will. And this is borne out, right? Yeah, James is killed. He's the first apostle to die. He's put to death by Herod Antipas. Okay? No, Antipater. Herod Antipater III, I think. And John is beaten with Peter a lot. They're exiled a lot. We know that John lives to be old because there's a rumor at the end of John, in John 21, that John is not going to die till Jesus comes back. And so he lives a very, 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 very long time. And I mean, think about that. You live that long and you see all of the other apostles die. You see all these things happening. And you're still, confessing. So yeah, I mean, he more than likely was the last apostle on earth. But to sit at Jesus' right hand or his left is not his to give, but it's given by the Father. And we see that, right? For the thief on the cross, that was a very, very good thing, right? That he was at Jesus' side, right? Because he is the one who repents and is brought into Christ's kingdom. The other one, not so much. So, and when the 10 heard it, they were moved with indignation against the two brethren, right? When they hear about it, they know somebody tried to pull a runaround, right? And so, of course, why are they mad? Right, because they didn't think about it first, right? But Jesus called them unto him and said, Ye know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. And whoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered to, but to minister and to give his life as a ransom for many. Right? Jesus' life is the paradigm for our own lives. That Jesus came not to rule, but actually to serve. Right? And that then forms our Christian life, in that the Christian life should be one of self-service, right? Of the putting away of self and serving everyone else, right? That's why the old title for the Pope was the Servus Servatum, the servant of the servants of God, right? Now, of course, that is a really funny title because he's a tyrant, right? But, but that's the whole point, is that if you would be great among the people of God, that means you have to serve, right? To the world, it seems very paradoxical. And it is. It seems like nonsense. But this is what it means to be a Christian, right? This is what it means to live the life of Christ, right? And it's something like the apostles should let us, because here, Jesus has been with them at least 3 years, right? By this time. And they still don't get it, right? And it shows, too, that this is a struggle that will be going on throughout your entire life, right? There are always going to be struggles like this in the church because the church is still made up of sinners. Just like there are always going to be sick people in the hospital, right? Or fat people in the gym, right? I mean, that's what those places are there for, right? And that's what the church is here for. All right, so I think that's enough for today. We did a lot. Bible study will be at 8 o'clock tomorrow, next Sunday.